Hi, my name is Jill C. Smith, also known as Jill Trolene. I'm a child care provider, a former teacher, a voice instructor, an author, and most importantly, I'm a parent. I recall a story from when I was a young girl, maybe about 7 years old. My family, we're from Long Island, New York. We took a trip to New York City. We piled in 2 cars, and it was my grandparents, my siblings, my parents, and I. And once we got there, we went up to my aunt's friend's apartment. We had never been, and there was a dish of candy. And I started eating this candy and was in front of a window just looking out. My mother didn't come up because she had just suffered a miscarriage and wanted to just, while we were there, wanted to stay in the car. She normally has this thing where she counts all her children. She's always like, I always count my children, and she would count us. Well, my father and the other adults that were with us, upon leaving the apartment, didn't check to see if Jill was with them. And there I was sitting there eating candy, not realizing that all the adults and the other children that were with us had left the apartment and left the building. When I finally realized that I was alone, I rushed out of the apartment after noticing no one was there. And even when I turned around after closing the door, I couldn't recognize which door I had came out because they all looked the same. So I went through this building. And at the same time, my family had been gone so long, I didn't even realize they were all the way over the bridge, really far away from where they had left me. At that point, my mother started to feel like one of her children may be missing, and they talked amongst the cars and said, "Where's Jill?" And when they didn't see me, of course, they came back. My mother panicked, was extremely upset, fussing at everybody. "I always count my children. You all have lost my baby." Well, to try to make a long story short, our outcome was much better than many parents have. I was found. My family did find me, and I was returned to my mother safe. However, I remember she used to always reminisce on that story and say how frightened and terrified she was that she would never find me again. Other people are not that lucky. There are children that leave their homes, they go to school, they go to the playground, they visit a friend's house, and they never return. Their parents never see them again. And if they do, it's much later in life, or they find out that their children were a victim of human trafficking. That's where someone is taken from their home or wherever they're at, and they are put in a situation where their life no longer belongs to them. Some of them are sold into prostitution. Some of them are forced to sell drugs or do drugs. Some of them are even taken out of the country, and their family never sees them again. That's what our topic is today, human trafficking. We come from a country that slavery was very imminent. It was 400 years that it was in this country where it was being utilized. African Americans, well at that time Africans, were stolen from their country. In some cases, their tribes actually sold them into slavery. And that's what's happening today, whether you know it or not. Not many of us realize how serious this situation is. Slavery actually still exists. Human trafficking robs its victims of their dignity and their childhood. It destroys their lives and kills their dreams. And this is not just here, it's not just in, this is worldwide. This is not just in certain countries. I mean, across Italy, Nigerian women were forced into the sex trade. Many girls in India, where it's very prevalent, are sold, by the time they reach puberty, they are sold by their own families, their own parents, the people they trust the most, into prostitution just to pay bills. And it's also here in the U.S., whether you realize it or not. I'm going to go ahead and show you a video that kind of brings statistics into the realm so you can see exactly how serious the situation is that we're dealing with. And I'm hoping it's going to work well. Okay, let me just start this for you.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. My time the Lord I wait. I pray the Lord my slumber to take.
14 years old. 500. 500. The number of underage girls who are sexually trafficked in Atlanta each month.
I want to go home. Our Father, Daddy in heaven,
Where are you?
hallowed be thy name.
7,200.
7,200.
7,200.
The number of men every month in Atlanta who are serviced by these underage girls.
Thy kingdom come, thy will touch me on earth as it is in heaven.
100 to 150.
The number of girls who are raped for profit each weekend in Atlanta.
God, why did you let this happen to
Valley of
me?
the shadow of death, I will fear no evil.
14.
14.
14.
The average age of an exploited teen in Atlanta.
14 years old.
I'm afraid to leave. Don't forget me.
9. 9.
9.
9.
Girls as young as 9 years old have been known to be sexually trafficked.
I'm so ashamed. Please, help me.
7.
The average number of years before a teen is killed or dies after entering the trade.
300,000. The number of underage girls at risk of sexual exploitation in the U.S.
55.
The percentage of internet child pornography based in the U.S.
90.
The percent of victims of sexual exploitation who are also sexually abused at a young age.
1.
1.
1.
1.
1.
1. 1. The number of people it takes to make a difference in this world. It starts with you.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Because I'm more than just a number.
On earth as it is in heaven. As it is in heaven.
Okay, and as you saw, we got some numbers going there so you could really see how severely this is affecting not only worldwide, but even right here in Georgia, Atlanta, where we are. I'm just going to read a little bit of a report that I have here. And this report is from 2004 to 2006. So this has changed quite a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and give you this. According to the TIP report of 2004 all the way through 2006, it was stated that about 600,000 to 800,000 victims are reported to be trafficked across international borders each year. This is an astounding amount, and unfortunately, this is just the reported incidents. Okay, and this is worldwide. This is a worldwide problem, and there are things that can put you at greater risk to be a victim of this. I'm going to show you one more video, very short one, but this is a survivor. Her name is Katrina Owens, and you could watch her testimony on YouTube, which these videos are from. And I'm going to also give you a list of the websites that I went on so you could see it for yourself. But let's go ahead and hear her story. If I could just get your attention again. This is Katrina Owens.
The environmental recipe that set victims up to be vulnerable to predators are poverty, sexual abuse, physical abuse, dysfunctional families, although I believe all families are dysfunctional. Some even more so than others, which creates those voids that are within, opens the door. Those are the vulnerabilities. Whether your father's not home, or he's never told you he loves you, or he never gives you that hug, that creates a void where you seek that attention outside of home. There's even sexual abuse increases those vulnerabilities in a sense where being with this trafficker, being with this pimp who protects me, who says he loves me, and yes, I'm physically abused, and yes, I'm sexually exploited, but it's a lot better than my stepfather coming into my bed every other night. Those vulnerabilities are some of the greatest when a lifestyle of sexual exploitation is better than what you have at home. From my experience, the critical point for a victim to leave the predator, to leave the trafficker, is when your will and desire to leave that lifestyle is greater than the risk that you have to take to walk away. Whether it means physical abuse, whether your family is threatened, that will and that desire to be beyond that point in your life is greater than the risk that you have to take. And even when leaving the lifestyle, just as with drug abusers, it takes practice. You know, it takes practice. It's not often that you just wake up one day and you're done with it. It takes time and time again of even going back into those relationships. Yes, even more than one time. And it's very similar to domestic violence relationships, where it's hard to understand why that wife won't leave her husband, beating after beating after beating. And there's a trauma bond, and there's an emotional bond, and there's the psychological bond is so strong that it affects, you know, the decision making of whether to leave and whether to stay. Well, the pivotal moment for me happened several times because it takes tons of practice. I left on numerous occasions, and he followed, and I went back. And my son, he was the deciding factor for me when I had to make a decision for him. And it took something outside of me to give me the courage to just walk away. And at that point, you know, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what happened. It didn't matter how it happened. And I literally had to fight my way out of that. The most important thing I would want the general public to understand is that they're victims. They're victims. You know, quite often you'll hear the words, you know, well, she's fast and she's promiscuous and she's this and she's that and she's up to no good and she'll never be anything. And the general public fails to realize that it started somewhere. She wasn't born that way. It started somewhere. And somewhere within that time before this point, she was a victim. She was a survivor before she even was sexually exploited. To not turn away. A simple, are you okay? You know, is there anything I could do to help you? As well as, that's all I can do right now.
As you can see, that's very emotional testimony. She's a survivor. And also from both videos, we can tell that there's many types of victims. Some are sold by their families or stolen from playgrounds. Some are brought into this by social media. You meet somebody on Facebook or some of these other type of social medias, and you think you're finding a new friend, and you've actually found a human trafficker, okay, that is ready to sell you to the highest bidder. They take your pictures off of Facebook, Twitter, wherever you have pictures of yourself, and they're like, look, got a pretty girl here, just developing, and they sell you to the highest bidder. And then there are people like Katrina Owens that you just heard from. She doesn't share exactly how she got started into it, but she shares the aspect of some people, they're looking for something, they're abused, or they feel lonely, or they don't have the support of a family, and they get into this for that type of, some kind of connection, and then they're stuck in there. But they are survivors once they come out, and they were also victims. They shouldn't be victimized more by, you know, being accused of being promiscuous, and that's why they were in that. I'm going to open it up to questions, and one of the things I want us to think about is the dangers through social media, isolation and depression, drug use, poverty, and the possible effects on human trafficking and sexual promiscuity. And I want to see what some of our thoughts are about those and how that could affect or put you in danger of human trafficking. Do we have anybody? Yes?
What does promiscuity mean?
Promiscuity meaning not having a moral basis. Say if, like as a young girl, I was taught from a very young age, I was in a Christian background, and I was taught that you don't have sex before marriage. And young ladies, we don't show boys our areas, you know, our private areas and different things. And if you were the type of person that was willing to show whatever you have, or didn't have some kind of cutoff of, this is not right, this isn't something that I should do, then you would consider being promiscuous, meaning permitting things to happen that you shouldn't have. Okay? And that's what that means. Okay? And I'm going to have my daughter go get that. Anybody else? Who can tell me what warning signs they might think would be something to look out for? Anybody? Yes?
Question about age.
Excuse me?
A question about your age.
Okay.
I feel that if a predator of some sort would bring you into human trafficking, they would ask you your age and at least get some sort of
Okay, that's what you're saying. That's if someone's asking about your age and you don't really know them, that's probably a sign that they may be a human trafficker. Very good. And before your what's your name?
My name is Josiah Vasquez.
Okay, Josiah. Thank you for that input, Josiah. And you up front?
I think something simple as like hello or something by a random stranger that's obviously beyond your age group. They could be a human trafficker in secret and not tell you, and they could like start conversations. And then when it gets like graphic into your personal problems and stuff, and like your age and stuff, like what he said,
Yeah.
that's like an alarm for something. Like this isn't a good situation to be in.
Yes, very good to be wise and think of why are they asking that.
Like basically, don't talk to strangers.
Okay, yes.
I'd also like to add to that what I said as well. I feel that when it all comes down to it, you shouldn't really trust the internet at all. I feel that if you were, say, in this situation, don't feed into it. You could know this person all your life and not know their background. If they were to even question you about the problems in your family, then you know that they're just looking for reasons why you should go.
If you don't know them, is that what you're talking about? You don't really know
the
them.
weak link to find, so that way they could cut it.
So that's you're right. That is good things to look at. I see a mom in the audience. I wanted to ask you the question because sometimes as children they don't really realize bills and things like that can really affect our families and how we are able to provide. I want to ask you the question: poverty and the possible effects on human trafficking. Do you think poverty plays a big what do you call it, a weight on that particular subject, or is there more of a gray area there?
That's a very difficult question to answer, in the sense where I could see poverty does open up the doors for a lot of things. I believe, according to the testimonial that we just saw, she, being experienced in that area, said that has a lot to do with it, and I can see that being possible. Yes, I can.
What can counteract that, though? Because there's plenty of poor people that their kids are well protected, and they don't succumb to that.
That's a good point too. I think the best way to counteract that, I would think, I could be wrong, I would believe would be to, though your situation may be tough, to just still, like you said, try to protect your children. And protection is by telling them of their value and letting them know that, though this may be a rough time right now, it doesn't mean that their lives in an impoverished situation has to remain that way. And to take steps, and for your children to see you take steps to get out of that situation. That, I would believe, would be one way of possibly counteracting it.
Very good. And I'm going to try and get some different people to answer. Another thing that could play into that, drug use, isolation and depression. Anybody have any thoughts on that? I see your hand. I just want to hear from some other people if we can. What are your thoughts on that? Any thoughts? Want me to come back to you?
Yeah, come back.
Okay, yes. Brian, what's your name?
My name is Jade Vasquez,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that something that might contribute to that would probably be them being depressed.
Mm-hmm. And how so? Like, what does that, do you think that does?
It probably puts them in the state of mind where they'll do anything they can to feel relaxed again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, and yeah.
I think it's also being added by low self-esteem. Like girls think like that because they're not what the world sees them as beautiful. They'll do anything it takes to make sure that they be that way.
Okay. And so that you're feeling that when they go into this, they're feeling maybe somebody is thinking of me as beautiful.
Yeah.
Very good answer. I wish we had more time to actually get some more questions answered. I'm just going to take a little switch here because this is just to present the actual problems that are at hand. We're not going to really try to decipher because there's so much that needs to be done in this. What we need to also try to remember, I think, is there are victims in this, there are villains, and there are heroes. Of course, the victims are the people that are taken and sold into human trafficking. It's also their families. Their families are victims. They have suffered a loss that affects their entire life, their entire community, you know, if it's a small place. And the villains, of course, are the people that are going after these young people. And sometimes it's older people. And don't think it's just girls. There are young men that are sold as well, or, you know, put in that position. And they're the heroes. Who are the heroes? Can anybody tell me who a hero is in this particular situation?
It can be anybody that thinks that they can change it.
Yes, you?
It could be somebody trying to resolve the issue. It could be somebody maybe trying, like in a